Okay, we are back. Did you guys miss us? I hope you did. Yeah, and just who knows what's happening with my hair right now? Just like I know.
You're
Okay.
gorgeous.
Thank you so much. Hey, so we are back, and we are here to talk about mental health and how to thrive in the job search pressure cooker. Which, it seems like every day I talk to a job seeker or someone who's looking to make a move or a hiring manager who's getting hammered because they aren't getting the right people in the right seats, or a recruiter who is like can't find the right person for the right job, or they're getting hammered from their end. And it's a thing. And it's a thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but not talking about it, I think, makes it worse. So, Anna, why don't you introduce yourself? And then after that, we'll kind of get going, and we're going to talk about what makes you you, and what you do, and how you do it. And I will jump in from time to time. We want your questions. We want your input. So feel free to put them in the comment section. If we look down or side to side, it's because we're reading your comments. We're not being engaged. And then, we also are going to talk a little bit about the boot camp that we are putting on. And then we're going to bring on a person or two who is going to talk about their experience. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm super honored to be here, and I always love showing up for your events, Jennifer, because you put such thought and care into making sure they serve your audience and that they're really valuable information for your audience. So I just want to honor you for a second and let you know that it means a lot to me and to, I'm sure, everybody that's watching this right now.
Thank you. That's really kind.
And as Jennifer said, my name is Anna Lang. I call myself Coach Anna. And what I do is I am a personal development coach. And what that is it focuses on the neuroscience of stuckness, what gets people stuck, what keeps them stuck, why they stay stuck. And really, I work with people who are in what I'll call extreme stress states. And how I support those people is there's two kind of major ways I do it. One is I address the physiology behind what is stressing you out, because a lot of people will feel like stress is as much physical as it is psychological. And a lot of people don't understand what's going on in their bodies, and it freaks them out, and it causes that stress spiral to just kind of go out of control. So the first thing we do is we dial in the physiology of it. And the second part is we look for what I'm going to call the disowned parts. And so as we go through life, we end up with a lot of pieces of ourselves that we label as bad, awful, shouldn't show up, destructive, whatever word you want to use, the bad things inside us. And we seek to minimize, oppress, push to the side, shut up, conquer. Let's look at all of the words. They're basically any war word you can think of, you battling yourself. And it creates these what I call disowned parts. And since you can't actually get rid of any of who you are, all that does is create a lot of confusion and a lot of problems. And then when you go through something like a major life transition, a divorce, a job change, a career zhuzhing, as we'll call it, those things bubble up and they trap you, and they lead to, more stuckness, more stress, so on and so forth.
Let me ask you this. So, you've had an incredibly interesting life. And you approach this really differently, I think, than a lot of people do. And before we became, peers and colleagues, we knew each other. We knew each other personally. And you have this gift of getting to it, right? And I've been on the receiving end of it, and I'm like, how are you in my head so fast? But I think for people who aren't fortunate enough to know you the way that I do, when you talk about those points, how can you identify them in yourself? Because I think so many people are like, you guys know I live in a Zoom. I'm sorry about that. One second. How do you identify?
The puppy wants to be part of this conversation. Maybe we are at a soul level communicating with your puppy.
okay, so what I was asking you is, what are the triggers? How do you identify the triggers in yourself that you know, hey, I'm the turkey and the button's out?
Oh, so I think people actually, when you're triggered. There are some pretty obvious ones. One, you're going to notice your heart rate go up. That's a really easy one. Your heart will start to pound. That is an immediate, I've been triggered. What your other things you might look for, anything that you would associate with stress, that's a trigger. So stress is really the difference between what you thought was supposed to happen, should happen, ought to, got to, need to, whatever, and what actually happened. That's where stress comes in. It's the difference between those two zones. And so when you're looking for triggers, you're looking to identify anywhere where your response to the difference is inhibiting you in some way. Does that make sense?
It does. So can you give me an example, right? So, because I think we all have those feelings of like when our heart starts to beat, like it could be, maybe you copied someone on a wrong email and you're like, oh God, this just went company wide and I just wanted it to go to this one person, right? Which that has happened to me. But I also think it's like, when you are in a job search or you're, like talking about the hiring managers or the recruiters, it's number one, I don't think people give themselves enough credit for a win, right? And
Yeah.
to give yourself grace. But when you talk about your steps, and you talk really fast, so maybe just slow it
Oh,
down just a smidge.
okay.
That's what everyone says to me because I talk like I'm at a debate tournament. So, but what I want to hear is I want to go back to your steps and how you developed your program and sort of the why. Like because it's game changing. I mean, you've had conversations with people that I know that have changed their life with what you do. Like this.
Okay. So are you talking about the breathe, acknowledge, those steps? Is that what we're looking at here? Or
Well, I want to talk about it all, but we've only got an hour and we need to answer questions. So I guess let's start back where you started before I interrupted you and before Buck decided he wanted to own the conversation.
okay, so what I was hearing you say there is that you would like to know more about the process. So when some examples of triggers and then the process you can follow to get through those triggers, which is a form of stress management, which is exactly what you said you want to talk about on this call.
Yes.
And it's super important because realistically, there are certain steps that I've based my programs on that you can apply in pretty much every circumstance or any circumstance. And again, there'll be exceptions to every rule, but these steps come in incredibly, incredibly useful when you notice that you're a trigger, when you're in a situation. And triggers can be emotional triggers. You can be triggered by something physically. You can have a barrage of emotional response. It can come in the form of a wave of chatter in your head. It can come in the form of sudden dissociation. So if suddenly you just go numb, suddenly you stop being able to focus, those are all types of triggers. And I actually outline, there's 6 or 7 different big ones that I outline in my programs.
Mm-hmm.
But those are some sort of generic examples. Now, when you notice that you're in these states, or let's use a job because this is focused on jobs, a really common and one of the most common fears in existence actually is the fear of public speaking. And so you're in a job interview, that is pretty much it. And the higher the stakes, the higher the stress, right? So a few things happen when you are in a stress state. And before we get to the how to deal with it, you've got to understand the physiology, right? What I said I was going to talk about. So let's talk about the physiology of stress before we go into how to solve it. When you go into stress, when your body perceives anything that will disrupt your safety, it goes into a fight or flight or a stress state. anything that it thinks will disrupt your safety. So being in a room where somebody controls your future would totally qualify. Okay, totally qualifies for this situation. What happens is a couple of things. One, your heart rate's going to go up, your blood pressure is going to rise, your breathing, you might notice you start shallow breathing. You are going to notice that your memory, your brain starts to feel like it's harder to remember things. And there's a reason for this. When you're in a stress state, your body is optimizing resources to fight the enemy. Your body has not yet evolved. Like the last 100 years or 200 or whatever of our evolution hasn't been enough time for our brain to evolve to know that emotional stress is not the same as a lion or as a physiological thing coming at you. So what it does is it's like, stress, something is going to or could impact your safety. We got to optimize our systems. Now, your thinking brain takes up 20% of your total available energy resources every single day, which means it's a hog. And you don't need your thinking brain when you don't need that thinking brain when you're going to fight a tiger. So one of the things your stress response does is it reroutes energy away from your thinking brain and into the base of your neck, which is your reptilian brain, which is the fast instinctive responses. And this is really important. So it'll do that. And when you do things like shallow breathing, or you hold your breath because you're nervous or because you're stressed out, you are now depriving your brain of oxygen, which is one of the biggest things it needs to function. So now not only is your body working against you, but you're helping it work against you. You're also, when you shallow breathe, you're raising your carbon dioxide levels in your blood. And what that does is it causes kind of a chain reaction. And remember, this is all happening while you're sitting there in front of the person who's interviewing you. This is all happening behind the doors. So now your CO2 levels are up, which means that there's this little thing in your midbrain, and it's called the locus ceruleus. And that little thing is now going to start, when it gets oxygen deprived, it starts pumping out neuroadrenaline. What neuroadrenaline does is it interrupts all of the parts of your brain that help you with things like logic.
Great. In the middle of an interview.
In the middle of an interview. So this leads very nicely into the very first thing you do when you notice your heart rate going up. There's an inhibitor to your safety somewhere. You're in this interview. Take a deep breath. And I'm not even joking. People make fun of breath work all the time. They laugh about it. They talk about woo-woo people. Oh my gosh, no, this real time helps you. When you take a deep breath, you are now giving yourself all of the oxygen that you need to, one, interrupt the thing that is involved in stopping your thoughts from properly coalescing in your head. You've stopped that. You've stopped it flooding the neuroadrenaline into your brain. Deep breaths also activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you. It helps because you've got cortisol running through your system at this point. You've got all kinds of stuff running through your system that you don't necessarily need in the middle of an interview because no tiger. It will help regulate those things. They did.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you give yourself like a code word when you see that happening, right? So when you're like, there's no tiger in the room, can you be like, okay, tiger, there's no tiger in the room. I need my reptilian part of my brain to shut the, blank up, right? Like you're not helping me in this situation. And, when you talked about, the chatter in your head, I call those like the circular conversations, right? Where you think about every bad thing that could possibly happen, or did you pay this bill, or did you send this email? Did you send the resume? Do you have a copy of the resume? Are they going to ask me for a resume? Right? So like the stuff that happens at 3:00 in the morning when it wakes you up. And then, when you're in the middle of the interview or maybe something just triggers you, you're like, oh my gosh, am I qualified for this role? Am I overqualified? Do they like me? Am I wearing the right clothes? Like, like I know the breathing thing, but is there anything else that you can do like to stop it in its tracks? I mean, I know this is an evolutionary thing, but in that moment.
Well, in the moment, giving yourself more things to think about, not recommended.
Okay.
I would not recommend giving yourself, but what I would recommend is, again, when you notice it, one, you've noticed it. That's a win. Take that deep breath. And there's techniques that you can use too. It depends on who you are. And this is an alchemy. So you're going to want to play with some of these things. But to your point, Jennifer, something that you can do is the second you notice it, you can do something like rub your fingers together. You know what I mean? You can press them, you can rub them together. That really quick, you can do this in your pocket. You can do this under the table. And just that sense of having, it's like a calming mechanism, right? It's a calming mechanism. But breathe in coordination with that. You can press, some people will press their fingers together. You can give yourself a and the word is escaping me right now, but there's a word that's escaping me, but basically you think of something in advance. You think of something that it brings you calm, that is very relaxing for you, and you get yourself emotionally in the place where you're feeling the feelings, you're thinking of the thing, and then you do something like press your fingers together and you hold them while you're thinking of that.
Which
And
doesn't make you look like a weirdo either. Like if you're just sort of like, oh, hi, or, I'm just gonna go like here for.
No, you do this in advance. This would be something you would do in advance. And
Okay.
then when you're in the situation, when you do that pressing of fingers together again, it will bring back those feelings and those sensations if you have gone deep enough with it when you did the setting in the first place. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It's like you're giving yourself a preset don't freak out at the interview. You've got this. Because I think, in the market when we started this live, I talk to people every day who just feel paralyzed, and they're super competent, right? They know what they're doing, but there are all these external factors, right? There's, and we talk a lot about how right now in this market, you have to take a 360 approach to getting a job, right? You have to have a strategy. And I think, dealing with your mental health, because your mental health affects your physical health.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a relationship between those two things. And I think having that mental health strategy during this, right? We, for those of us, you're in Canada, but we're having an election year, right? It's divisive, right? You turn on the news and there's bad news, and there's stuff happening, in the Middle East, and there's stuff happening here, and maybe your kid isn't doing well, or maybe your spouse isn't happy in their job, but you need to have that income. You have all of these things that just they churn and they churn and they churn, and so what I would love from you is to give some of those tools and those suggestions. And I know we talk a lot about this in the boot camp that we do, but like if your mental health isn't great, it's going to have a ripple effect in the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And it's going to follow you, right? And so and we need to be sure to put your website where people can schedule time with you one-on-one and sign up for your different programs in our chat session. But and also we talk a lot about this in our boot camp. But what are some things that people can do? I mean, I understand like the getting ahead of yourself. The reptilian brain is going to live in infamy, and I just want to have another live where we just talk about the reptilian brain, because when my dogs were barking, my reptilian brain, who's like, could be a Spitfire later. I would never do that, but that little brain that you talked about there, she was not happy. So, and then I think we're going to bring on Andrew at like 1/2 or maybe a little bit after that to talk about sort of his experience and the job search and how, you helped and guided him and given him some information. And we also want people to ask questions. So I turn it back to you to continue with your great advice.
Okay, so we want some great strategies. No, this is great. I love this. But there's one other thing before we leave off on the breathing, just because I feel that people write it off too fast. I was reading a BBC article yesterday, and the author, Dr. Michael Mosley was the author of the article, and he was talking about an assessment they did. So they took a group of students in a French business school, and they found that performing deep breathing exercises resulted in a 50% increase in their ability to do task level decision making. So they were doing whatever it was they were doing, and they noticed a 50% better results after 2 minutes of breathing exercises. Okay, 2 minutes, guys. It's a real thing. But anyways, I will stop that because I have my little I go on my soapboxes. Other things we can.
I love that. And I actually, if we've got time, I would love for you to demonstrate that if you can. You know, I mean, because I think it's worth the 2 minutes, because that's like our whole job, you guys, is to fill up your toolboxes with things that are going to help. And I'm not being sarcastic when I talk about the reptilian brain. I mean, that is literally something, you know, I've heard you talk about it before, but today you put it in context where I went, okay. Like now I have a visceral awareness, and, you know, that's maybe why Buck decided to bark, to be like, connected some of those dots for me. But so, I mean, keep going, because I think this is really interesting. And you guys, please ask any questions or share any stories if you want. Like, you don't have to, because I know this is a mental health and people may not want to ask questions. But you can if you want to.
Yeah. Oh, please do. And if you can filter them through me, because my phone has shut itself off and I don't want to look away from my audience.
I got you.
I love that. So I will share the while we're on the breathing, I will share the easiest breathing exercise you can do. And it is called box breathing. And a lot of people will say, oh, breathe in for X amount of counts, hold it for the same amount, exhale for the same amount, and then hold it. Now, some people like myself, when I first started doing this, my ability to breathe in was so limited that I couldn't breathe in without my shoulders coming in, because my stress state was so intense. I couldn't actually unclench my body. So I was actually not able to breathe out and hold it because I couldn't get enough air in. That's how shallow my breathing was. If that is you in your stress state, and we can do this together, do the breathing, start with 2 counts. So you breathe in for 2 counts, you go, hold it for 2 counts, breathe out for 2 counts, and then you can breathe straight in again. And that would be a form of box breathing called triangle breathing. But whatever it is you choose, be it the box breathing or the triangle breathing, I recommend 3 to 4 rounds. You can do that during an interview. You don't look weird. Nobody needs to know you're doing it. It doesn't have to be a... You don't need to do it like that. You don't need to freak anyone out. But try it, and you will notice yourself, your heart rate, all of it regulating in real time.
I love that. So,
okay. Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt you?
No, you didn't.
Okay. A few other things, and I will give, because I know we have very limited time, and I really want to resource you guys with some great tools. You've heard this before, and I'm going to say it again. Exercise is one of, and it doesn't have to be running, but exercise is one of your best defense mechanisms against stress, because what you want to do is you want to preempt as much as you can, and exercise builds your body up so that it has the physical capacity to work better under stressful situations. And you just want every asset you can working for you when you're in stress states. So that's one thing, definitely. Exercise. It also releases endorphins, and you can get dopamine, and all of the feel-good stuff in your body will happen when you're doing exercise, when you're filling your body with goodness. That's one of them. Another one that we really want to address here is celebration. And I talk about, I have an entire course on celebration. It's another one that people write off. They'll be like, oh, whatever. But here's what celebration is, guys. When you celebrate something, you are telling your body and your brain and your unconscious self that this thing matters. You are evaluating your steps. When you don't celebrate the small steps, you don't celebrate that you showed up, you don't celebrate that you took you went and got the groceries, whatever it is, you don't celebrate that. It is telling your body that thing doesn't matter, that thing's not valuable, that thing doesn't have worth. And if you fill your day with things that don't have worth, it psychologically buries you alive. You become a have to, got to, ought to, need to, and you cannot find your way out of it. You bury yourself alive. It's when you celebrate, one, it releases dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone. And by the way, dopamine is responsible for motivation. So when you don't have dopamine, you lose motivation. And I'm not just talking motivation to keep going. They did a study on rats, and they found that when they inhibited their dopamine receptors, the rats still felt hungry, but they lost all motivation to get up and eat. That's how important that neurochemical is, or neurotransmitter is, to your body. Okay.
So just a quick question in that. So, I mean, I think I have certainly fell into the, I don't have the time to do this, right? I don't have the 5 minutes or the 10 minutes. And for example, like you and I were talking this morning, and I was like, I tried to be really intentional and say, hey, I have to run, I have to go do this 20 minutes of exercise, right? Now, did I really want to do that? I didn't really. I really wanted to keep talking to you. But I know that when I do that, the rest of my day is going to be exponentially better. And it's not just about, exercising to lose weight or to do whatever. It's exercising to make your life better. And it doesn't, you don't have to run. You can walk. You can do, foot, some push-ups. You could do wall push-ups. I mean, there's 10,000 different things that you can do. But the other thing that you said that I think is so, so important is finding the joy, right? And, again, we talked not that long ago where I was in a bit of a bad mood, right? And you were like, so, what are you celebrating today or what? And I was like, no, I'm not celebrating. And, and I'm not generally that person. I am almost always a glass is half full. So, you reminded me that, like, find your joy, find the thing, whatever it is that celebrates yourself. Like, I am proud of myself that I exercised today. I'm, proud of myself that I whatever it is, and practice that for yourself. And also, I guess joy and gratitude to me are really intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and when you practice gratitude and, and again, you and I have known each other a while. And, I think when I was in one of my lowest moments, I was like, you want me to practice gratitude? F that. I have no interest in that. Blah, 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 blah. And so my gratitude was like, okay, I have a roof over my head. I have water that doesn't taste like iron. And, I am not wearing adult diapers today. That's what
But you know what? I didn't tell you to have gratitude. I would have said practice appreciation, because appreciation precludes gratitude. If you do not appreciate something, you cannot be grateful for it. And when people are like, oh, I just can't, I can't do gratitude. I'm like, do you appreciate anything in your life? And very few people will say, I appreciate nothing, right? There's something you appreciate, and it's the precursor to gratitude.
It could be how the wind feels on your face, right? It could be, like, just, like how something feels. Like, that is an appreciation. And I think in our dark moments when we're going through a lot of stress, and I know a lot of people are going through extreme stress, those little things can make the difference from having an average day to an amazing day, right? So I just, Gabe, first of all, you are cracking me up, and I'm trying to stay focused, sir. But Gabe wanted to know what you're drinking, because it's so awesome, right? And again, I say this on most lives. I don't pander. I can't. I think I'm genetically, I just can't. And so what you've shared, I think, is just it's so amazing and it's so helpful because, again, whether you're in a job search or you're just in a place in your life where you're stressed, taking these little nuggets, like I do this. I didn't know that that's what my reptilian brain and whatever was telling me to do, but this little thing that you do, I do that frequently, right?
Mm.
I didn't realize that it helps soothe me and it helps reset, right? But I think that's a powerful little thing. The breathing, the box breathing, 2 seconds in, hold it, 2 seconds, two,
Yep.
2, 2, and do it maybe a few times. Like I just did it with you when you were doing it. And I was like,
expand that. I would, with box breathing, your goal is to get up to like an 8 count if you can. It's not a competition, but start where you are and move. Can I say one thing about the exercise though?
Go ahead. No.
Can I say one thing about the exercise? This will support so many people. A number of years ago, I did an interview with Dr. Robert Maurer. He wrote the One Small Step, the Kaizen Way. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. But one thing he talked about, people, if you don't like exercising, here's something you can do and it will double your metabolism. Let me say that again. This is going to double your metabolism. And that is, wait for it, stand up at your desk 2 or 3 times a day and move around a little bit. I kid you not. That's how easy this gets to be. He wrote the book One Small Step. He has 100 different recommendations like that. And his philosophy, which I have adopted, and I think it's really important for mental health, is start where you are and ease yourself in one small step at a time. Start with that standing at your desk. If you don't want to go for a 7-mile walk, don't. Move at your desk, start there. Then maybe put your shoes by the door. Then maybe put your shoes on. Maybe stand up during commercial breaks. Whatever it looks like, get creative and start somewhere.
Just start.
Start somewhere. And that would lead really nicely into like one small step is literally one of the things you can do to massively impact your stress, because what you're doing with a small step is you're bringing the whole world and the chaos of your world into one achievable, focused point in time. And what we do is that builds competency, because you can do that thing. And then competency builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. And if you inch your way, you will find that you get across that finish line so much faster than you ever believed possible, because you'll take so many more steps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, sorry, I just had a moment of like, yeah, like taking those moments. So, first of all, thanks y'all for all the nice comments and for being here to support us. We really sincerely appreciate this. I think, what time is it? So it's 12:30. We've got, a little less than half an hour left. One of the things that we wanted to do was invite a gentleman, Andrew Gibbs, who all of you guys know him as the Data Cowboy, to join us for some time and to share his experience. And then we will continue to ask questions, and Anna probably is going to go back and I'm going to ask her to do some more of those breathing exercises. And then we might talk a little bit about the boot camp and what we do, because we just kind of jumped into it. We didn't tell people what we do, but we can do that at the end. Andrew, whenever you are ready to join, we will bring you in. So you just let us know. There you are. The Data Cowboy.
That you called me a gentleman.
I mean, I use the term loosely, okay? So like, don't get too cocky, my friend.
Try not to.
You can't help yourself. It's one of the things that we love about you. So one of the things that, well, first of all, like, you volunteered to be here today. We didn't have to coerce you. And there's a thing happening on LinkedIn today that I am really loving. And I just want to speak to it for a moment. And that, there are people lifting each other up. Gabe didn't know me from Adam, but he knew people that we knew, and so he added us into his newsletter and sent out that we were going to be doing this event. It was amazing. And Gina posted something this morning about people that she knows that are worth knowing, and mentioned me in that, and some other people, and Lindsay did the same thing. And it's having this ripple effect, and kindness goes a long way, and lifting other people up and showing your gratitude is, and I'm going to take your word, and appreciation is really important, because we're surrounded by so much negativity. We're surrounded by people who are just like, what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me? What's in this for me? And what I'm seeing today, and what I started seeing yesterday, is this, I'm going to call it a tsunami of kindness. And I love it. And we need more of it. And how Andrew came to be here is Dan Roth was also going to be on this live, but he got COVID, and it knocked him out. And so sending prayers to Dan, his whole family, his twins, everybody's got it. And Andrew sent me a text on, LinkedIn, and said, hey, if you need me, I'm going to join. And I'm not going to get into the details, but I've had a very sick horse, right? I live on a ranch, and it's been very touch and go with, is she going to live or is she not, right? So yesterday when you reached out, I was in the barn, and everything's looking good, and that she's going to be okay. But you volunteered to jump in, like that's a lovely thing to do. It's a kind thing to do. We're appreciative of it. And you did it without asking. That's the thing, and it's happening, and I like it, and I want to keep it moving in however we're doing it. And so I guess now it feels sort of self-serving, but I know we didn't want it to be that way. But I guess, Andrew, what I would love to hear from you is, like, what do you have to say? Like, why did you want to be part of this, other than we all know each other and we love you and we love the hat, um, about being here, and maybe your experience with the boot camp, and why you did it, and why you love Anna. I mean, I know why I love Anna. Everybody knows why I love Anna.
I'll jump right in. I'll start off with a disclaimer. Anna did not help me with my mental health. She was not my one-on-one during the workshop, but she helped me tremendously with several other aspects during the workshop. And that was probably one of the best things about the workshop, was that we got to rotate through, work with a multiple of good, qualified experts who could bring their own flair and their own perspective on different elements across the entirety of the 2 days. So while Anna really didn't have to peer inside my hat, so to speak, I did get to work with Helen, and she was tremendous. She walked through some breathing exercises. We talked about stressors and stress relief. And it's amazing how much all of this lines up with personal experiences throughout my career, elements of my background where I've been in stressful situations. And we've talked about, while we called it the lizard brain, it's still the same thing. It's that central part of our nervous system that drops us into a fight or flight situation, and can control how we react. And if I had to bring anything forward as a nugget for folks, it's that, I guess, maybe two things. One is balance, and the other is preparation. And if you can maintain a balance in every aspect of your life, whether it's physical health, the mental health, uh, act, the people you interact with, if you can keep that balance, where sometimes, yes, you have stress, sometimes you can kick back and relax, sometimes you interact with a large number of people, sometimes you get a little quiet to yourself. If you can find harmony in that balance throughout your life, it will help ground you when you do go into stressful situations. And then the other is that preparation. If you wait until the moment that you're stressed, to start doing breathing exercises, or you start thinking of a mantra, or something that helps you, it's a little late for that scenario. So if you can prep by understanding, you were mentioning tigers. I've always said, they can't eat me. It's no matter how bad the scenario is, they're not cannibals. They're not going to cook me and eat me. So I can get through the situation. It will resolve itself. This will be good. And beforehand, do some of those breathing exercises. Think of your happy place, if you want to call it that, and get a positive attitude going in. Realize the fact that you probably will feel that wave of stress, whether you're going on stage to talk to people, whether you're a closet introvert like I am, and you're having to go and shake hands and meet a bunch of people. Whatever that situation is, understand that you're going to feel that sort of wash over you, but know that it's temporary. It's natural. It's going to go
Right.
away, and then you move out. And so those those are the nuggets that have helped me, and I got a lot of that reinforcement in the workshop. Helen helped me really talk through some of this that I had stored away back in here, but had never really applied. Uh, because a lot of us in the job search aren't allowed, I guess, as far as society goes, allowed to show that distress, or to show that concern. We're expected to come on and be on when you get into the interview, and so it's really good to have that discussion and a chance to prepare. And I'll
Yeah.
shut up.
Mm.
I mean, no, don't shut up. We love that. I mean, I think it's, I think it's part of when we were building out the boot camp, and I was very focused that I wanted there to be a mental health aspect of it, and like there's a questionnaire that goes out and everybody has to fill it out because that gives us information as coaches and experts how best to craft a strategy for you, like a job search strategy, and banner and LinkedIn optimization and all of that, and the some of the people were like, I don't need this, I'm not really interested in it, but then when in it, came away with something that was really helpful, right? And that's what this boot camp is supposed to be about, right? It's about the 360, your unique value proposition and your ATS resume, and um, using Intry to do that, and taking your assessment, and and talking about, the technology that blocks you, and how do you do that, and how do you create drip campaigns, and how do you optimize things, and how do you network and interview, and the mental health aspect of it. I mean, we wanted to do that in 2 days, and it's a lot and it's a heavy lift. And Anna, for those of you who don't know, not only is she, a mental health coach and expert, but she's also been an incredible designer. And when we had someone, sort of fall out from personal reasons, um, um, and Annie, we love you, and we're sending you prayers still. Um, Anna jumped in and was absolutely fabulous at doing some. And I don't want to give too much away, right? But it was amazing. And I think, those of us, sometimes we see ourselves through a certain lens, and it's important that you can see yourself through a myriad of different lenses, and that hopefully, what we did with the boot camp was give you a kaleidoscope to see yourself through.
It really was phenomenal all the way around. And I think what really helped from that initial that survey, that questionnaire that went out, was it helped me really think about the areas where I hadn't really challenged myself, uh, where I had sort of taken what I've done in the past and just lopped on, okay, the experience from the last couple of years, update the same resume,
Right.
update the same LinkedIn profile. And I said earlier, I hadn't really thought about mental health much in the course of things, but
Yeah.
we always say iron sharpens iron. And I really liked going in and being able to have the candid conversations with people, tell folks up front, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I need someone to tell me where we can improve.
To keep it
Let's
real.
let's get that feedback. And it was all constructive. And it really paid off. It's been a huge help, and it's really helped me focus where I need to focus.
Right. And I know that had interviews and other things, right? That
Mhm.
have come up, in the process. And, and I want to circle back to and ask you a couple questions. So, the stress it's not just about the person who's looking for the job, right? It's also the partner, the spouse, the children of the people who are looking for the job. And I think, it's, and I'm going to use myself as an example, right? Like, I always felt like I was like Wonder Woman, right? And I would have this vest and I'd be like, okay, everybody get back here. I've got you. Don't worry about this. Everything is going to be fine, right? And then you set up these expectations for the people around you that when you're not fine, they don't know what to do with you not being fine because you're always the person who is fine, right? So that's question one for you. Question two to that is when your partner, spouse, son, daughter, is also feeling this stress of like, okay, can I not go to camp because we don't have this much money, or I don't have as much gas money, that also is stressful. So how can the person who's looking for a job help communicate that to their spouse? And then how can the person who is feeling that stress with the person who's looking for a job support them? Like, they've got to support each other, but how can they support that person?
Yeah. And I think you've somewhat answered it in what you said. And it really comes down to communication. So one, there's expectations, and often we do not communicate our expectations. We expect this to be common sense. We expect this person will provide. We expect this is how it will look. That we expect the job will be there. We expect the money will be there. And then it's not. And we've never communicated the first expectation. And now there's all the sub things going on in the questions, which we don't know how to ask because we've never started the conversation in the first place. So the first place we've got to start is with a safe space and a transparent conversation. And that can be absolutely game changing. Now, there's some things to be aware of when you go into these conversations, because everyone has an expectation. And often those expectations have been put on somebody without their consent. And I know we're in consent culture right now, but an expectation without consent is pressure. I want everyone to really remember that, because that's a huge thing in relationships.
Okay, say that one more time, because that's really important.
Expectation without consent is pressure, right? That's you tossing yourself on someone else and expecting them to conform. Without consent, it doesn't fly. So when we're entering these conversations, the first thing we want to really be aware of is our breathing. And I'm going to come back to that, because if you hold your breath in these conversations and you start getting triggered, your energy, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this before, your energy is going to go up and up and up into your head. And then your head's going to do this thing called prefrontal cortex overload. And it's going to turn basically into a ball of cotton. And it'd be like walking into your house and trying to make it through the cotton, right? From one side to the other, as if it was full of fluff or something. That's what it'll be like. And communication doesn't work in those. So we want to go in, we want to make sure that we're doing what we can. And then we want to do psychological safety first. So, hey, I would really like us to sit down and
role play this with me. Okay. So let's role play it.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah. So I'm a little nervous. Jennifer's my spouse right now. Hey, Jennifer. I would really like to sit down and have a conversation with you. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of things I would like to talk to you about the changes and what my lack of job means for us. When would be a good time?
I really appreciate you asking me that question, because I'm feeling, kind of angry and frustrated, and I don't know why it's taking so long.
Yeah.
You know, my friend next door like interviewed and she has a job already. You have all these other qualifications. You're amazing. Everybody says you're amazing, but you still don't have a job. Like, what's wrong with you?
So I hear you, Jennifer, and what I hear in your voice right now is that you're very frustrated. But what I would like to do is have a conversation first that addresses, and I absolutely, I want to hear all about how you're feeling, and I would love the opportunity to tell you about how I'm feeling. And the way I would love to do it is that I would like to be able to express without feeling like I'm doing something wrong, because I feel kind of really bad right now. And I would really love to be able to express to you, and then for us to work together to find a way to support each other. And I get for sure that this must be a frustrating experience for you, but could we do that? And can we also use I language? Because when we talk to each other and one of us is saying, you make me feel, it sounds like we're blaming. And I don't think either of us want that.
I can do that. And I appreciate you framing that in a way where we both get a chance to talk about how we feel in a safe place and sane.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways, and it really depends on who you're talking to. And if you've never had a conversation like this before, the you make me feel when is going to happen. 9 times out of 10, someone's going to say, you make me feel so frustrated. Why aren't you? Why don't you? Why can't you? And dialing back on that language is very necessary. But when that happens, my encouragement to people and what I would coach people on and role play with would be how to bring the conversation to a unified vision. Like, what do both of you, what's your win-win scenario? And you can even ask that to somebody. I really want to talk to you about this. What's our win-win scenario? And yes, obviously the win scenario is that I get a job, but what matters to you the most right now? What matters to me the most? How can we navigate it if it doesn't go the way we want? What does it look like? What are your expectations? I mean, your expectations are about you, not me. So me taking them personally doesn't do anything for our conversation.
I love that. And I hope you guys were tolerant of our role play, but you know, I intentionally trying to put things in that I think a lot of people default to, right? And first of all, I think there's nothing wrong with having expectations as long as your expectations are communicated, right?
Yes.
It's the uncommunicated expectations where I think, you know, you get this stuff.
Well,
No,
if communicated expectations with the expectation that somebody else is going to conform is dictating.
I mean, that's a really good point. So, Andrew, I don't know, did we? I thought you were going to say something, and then we were talking. I'm sorry. Is there anything that you wanted to say?
I simply want to say that I'll refer to my immediate supervisor as the Data Cowgirl. She and I have a 30 plus year relationship, and so for us, it was a little easier to go into just a state of saying we need to have a team meeting and sit down and talk about it from a team approach. But I get it that you have to tailor that conversation based on the individuals and the situation. I dropped into the chat one of the things that I've always heard said. That's the distinction between broadcasting and communication. The co means bi-directional. You've got to have input and reception from both sides before it's communication. Otherwise, you're just an all night jazz radio station, sending out a signal and nobody's listening.
Yeah.
So you can't fall into that.
Yeah.
But that world of expectations is very real, and for me as a dad, it's something I'm very sensitive to, in understanding that my daughters are concerned that this could very well affect our way of life, and it's very personal to them. And like you mentioned in the role play, it's often for them not to understand what the reality is that we go through as job seekers. So it's a challenge sometimes to translate that, to tell that story, and to help them appreciate it without them getting depressed or stressed out along the way.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned that, Andrew, because and my husband and I have talked about this. Really good communication in the family is not that different from really good communication in the workplace between leadership and where it's collaborative. And I know we have somebody on watching right now, Lindsay Dowd, talks about this specifically, creating psychological safety. You like collectively, how are they involved in the solution? How are they involved in, okay, so if things don't go well, they feel they have a say in whatever's going down, if it's fine, we have to sell our house. Okay, well, do they have a say in where we go next? How can they have that piece of ownership in the situation that they really feel they're outside of? And that creates such a connection and such an opportunity for growth as a family and for communication and for connection. So I really love that you brought that up.
I'm going to add to that a little bit that I think it's also an opportunity, right? It's life is changing, right? Like the job search strategy is changing. How people look for a job 5 years ago is different than how they did it 3 years ago, is sort of different than how they're doing it now. And, there's technology challenges. There's, ATS filtering challenges. There is, there's ageism in some things that are happening, right? I mean, it just, I see it all the time, and I think it's great to own it, but it's also like, make sure you don't say, I've been doing this for 30 years, or I've been doing this for, because chances are your resume could get parsed out. That's a very real thing. And so I think what both of you have said are opportunities to share with our partners and our children that, we're human, and, we're here to support you, but we also need your support, because sometimes, things don't go our way, but how we model the negative things in our life is how our children are going to hopefully model it when they get older. And if we include them in the conversation, exactly. I feel like if my son were here, he'd be like, maybe, just to be a contrarian. But, I mean, I think that those are the things that you hope you can show your children, is a little bit of resilience. But resilience doesn't mean that you can't be vulnerable. Resilience doesn't mean that you can't say that you're scared or that you need some additional support. Like, there's no shame in asking for help in any aspect of your life, whether you're looking for a job, or you are having a bad day, or are, wanting to start exercising and you need maybe a buddy that's going to help motivate you, right? Or like sharing that. And, what I mentioned earlier, just about, the being kind and modeling good behavior, I think is what we can teach our children and what we can show other people. Yeah. That, you can be stuck, but you can get unstuck. And, one of the things that my dad used to say was, this is the chapter. This is maybe even just a page in a chapter. It's not the book. And, adversity is going to happen. Life is difficult. It's how we deal with those difficult situations that really define who we are. And in my opinion, time. Oh my God, that went so fast.
Can I say one more thing? Because you just reminded me of it, and it's so good. And anyone watching this, I want to remind you, and this is a big one. You have a 100% batting average for every obstacle that has come your way thus far. You have made it.
I love that. That is amazing. Okay, so Valeska, I want to give credit to you. She is behind the scenes managing all of this, and as always, she has done a stellar job. Are there any questions that we haven't answered, or anything that anybody wants to know about? Any final comments? I put the bootcamp information in the chat for those of you who are interested. But I just want to say a big thank you to Andrew for showing up and being, your best self, as you always do. You always do, and you always are. And, we're creating this village, and, we're always going to be here. Right. And Anna, per usual, I don't know what, Gabe was saying, but whatever you're putting in your drink to make your brain work the way it does, like if we could just put that in Trader Joe's for the rest of us, we'd be deeply appreciative.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's always an honor to be here, as I said when we started this call. And I love watching these. These are great value. Anyone who hasn't watched the other ones, I encourage you to go through Jen's feed and watch them. There are some insane experts. They have incredible advice. These people are amazing and outstanding. So I highly encourage that.
All right. On that note, it's a wrap, y'all, or all y'all, because it's plural. So any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. And again, just a heartfelt thanks. And if you want to share this live with other people you think who could use it, that would be great too.